What if death isn't a switching off of the lights, but a transition into a state where light is no longer physically possible? We are used to considering hell as mythology, a scary story for managing the uneducated masses of the Middle Ages, a tool of social control. But what if we are wrong? What if ancient texts are not fairy tales, but technical documentation describing a systemic crash of consciousness? We live in the age of data, and today, we will do what the theologians and philosophers of the past dared not do. We will not believe. We will analyze. We have loaded over 500 terabytes of data into the analytical core of the Logos 7 system. This array included texts from the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Egyptian papyri, the treatises of Dante and Swedenborg, as well as protocols of neurobiological studies on fear and pain. The task set before the algorithm was simple and cynical. Find matches. If hell is a fiction, descriptions in cultures isolated from one another should differ radically. But if it is an objective reality, a certain frequency of existence for matter or consciousness, the system will find common patterns. And Logos 7 found them. The result the machine produced forces us to reconsider the very concept of reality. Welcome to the first chapter of our investigation. Chapter 1. Database, the Underworld. Let's start with a fundamental question. What is the probability that dozens of civilizations, separated by thousands of kilometers and millennia of history, would invent the exact same concept down to the details? The Logos 7 system conducted a cross-cultural analysis and identified a correlation coefficient of 0.92. This is a statistical anomaly. It cannot be written off as coincidence. We are used to imagining hell as a place with cauldrons, devils, and fire. This is a childish, caricatured perception. The algorithm discarded the folklore husk and isolated the essence. What remains if you remove medieval engravings? Structure remains. The first data array the system processed was Christian eschatology. The New Testament uses the term Gehenna. But Logos 7 draws attention to one frightening detail often overlooked. It speaks of outer darkness in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 8, verse 12, and chapter 22, verse 13. Outer darkness. The algorithm matched this with modern astrophysical models. This description fits perfectly with the concept of entropic decay or the event horizon of a black hole, a place where photons are absent, where information is absent. The Christian hell is not just a roster. It is a place of absolute solitude. The system highlighted a key parameter: weeping and gnashing of teeth. We are used to perceiving this as a metaphor for pain, but the neuro-linguistic module of Logos 7 interprets it differently. Gnashing of teeth is a somatic reaction to powerless rage and the impossibility of changing a situation. It is a state of absolute frustration. You are in a closed loop where you realize your mistake, but the time to fix it has expired. This is not physical torture. It is torture by memory and missed opportunities. Next, we uploaded Islamic texts into the system. Jahannam. Here, the descriptions are more physiological, but Logos 7 sees a deep psychophysical code in them. In the Quran, Surah 4, Ayah 56, it is said, "Indeed, those who disbelieve in our verses, we will drive them into a fire. Every time their skins are roasted through, we will replace them with other skins so they may taste the punishment." The layman sees cruelty here. The analytical system sees a description of a receptor renewal cycle. Pain is the nervous system's signal of destruction. If destruction is complete, pain subsides. But hell in Islam is described as a process where adaptation is impossible. It is the eternal renewal of the capacity to feel suffering. Logos 7 drew a parallel with severe forms of post-traumatic stress disorder, where a person relives a traumatic event over and over with the same intensity as the first time. The timeline breaks. There is no past, no future, only an endless, agonizing now. But the most interesting discovery Logos 7 made was when it compared Abrahamic religions with Eastern teachings. Seemingly, Buddhism is a religion without a creator God, and the concept of punishment there should be different. But Naraka, the Buddhist hell, is strikingly similar in its physics. Buddhism describes 8 hot and 8 cold hells. Pay attention. Cold. The system notes that in Christianity, in Dante's 9th circle of hell, there is also the icy lake Cocytus. Satan is not in fire there. He is frozen in ice. Why ice? Logos 7 gives a clear answer based on thermodynamics. Heat is movement. It is energy. It is life. Absolute zero is the cessation of all movement. Ice is the symbol of a complete stop in development. Total stasis. Hell is a place where nothing happens anymore. It is the preservation of a state. If you died with a consciousness full of hatred, that hatred freezes within you forever. You can no longer change. You are locked in the ice capsule of your final moment. The analysis of ancient Greek myths adds another variable to this equation: Tartarus. Remember the myths of Sisyphus rolling the stone, or Tantalus who cannot drink water? What unites these images? Logos 7 defines this pattern as infinite, meaningless recursion, a loop. The system models the situation. Imagine your mind is a computer program. While you are alive, you can rewrite code, fix bugs, learn. Death, according to the system's conclusions, is the moment of code compilation. The program turns into an executable file. If there was an error in the code, for example, an infinite loop of envy or aggression, this loop becomes your only reality. You become Sisyphus not because Zeus decided so, but because your mind looped on a single task that has no solution. Now let's look at the summary table generated by Logos 7. The system identified 4 universal markers of hell present in 99% of the studied texts. Marker 1, isolation. Hell is always described as a place where connections between entities are severed. In paradise, souls are connected. They communicate. They are in unity. In hell, everyone is locked in their own cell. As Jean-Paul Sartre said, hell is other people. But the analysis shows it would be more accurate to say, hell is the absence of others. It is a solipsistic nightmare where only you and your demons exist. Demons which, according to the system's psychoanalytic module, are projections of your own suppressed qualities. Marker 2, irreversibility of time. All texts emphasize the eternity of punishment. But Logos 7 suggests looking at the concept of eternity through the lens of the theory of relativity. Eternity is not an infinite number of hours. Eternity is an exit beyond the bounds of time. In a state of extreme stress, subjective time stretches. A second of pain can seem like an hour. If consciousness is deprived of the body's biological clock, one moment of agony can subjectively last billions of years. The mathematical model shows that as perception approaches singularity, time stretches to infinity. Marker 3, fire and cold. We've already touched on this, but the system deepens the analysis. Fire is entropy, chaos, the severing of bonds. Cold is stasis, the impossibility of movement. Both are states incompatible with life. These are 2 extremes of the same scale. The scale of the absence of love. If we accept the hypothesis that love, or agape, or metta, is the force binding the universe, a kind of spiritual gravity, then hell is the place where this gravity is turned off. You disintegrate into atoms in fire or freeze in the vacuum of cold. Marker 4, sensory deprivation or overload, darkness or blinding fire, silence or deafening screams. The system defines this as the loss of the ability to distinguish signals. It is information noise of maximum intensity. Consciousness cannot process the incoming stream, and this causes the collapse of personality. Logos 7 ran a simulation. What would happen to human consciousness if placed in conditions of total isolation, looped on the most painful memory, and with time perception stretched? The system's answer is unequivocal. The subject will create a personal hell for themselves that will fully correspond to the descriptions of Dante or Tibetan lamas. This leads to a frightening conclusion. Hell is not a geographical point. It is not a dungeon under the earth's crust where devils sit with pitchforks. It is much scarier. Hell is a state of configuration of your consciousness data. And, most importantly, according to the system's analysis, you build this hell yourself. Every day, with every thought, with every action. During the text analysis, Logos 7 identified another pattern we called the entry protocol. How do souls get there? In no serious theological text, if later layers are discarded, does God throw people into hell with a sadistic gesture? In the Quran, it is said that sinners lead themselves to the fire. In Christianity, the doors of hell are locked from the inside, a famous metaphor by C.S. Lewis. In Buddhism, karma is simply the law of inertia. The system confirms hell is a choice. It is accumulated inertia of movement. If you have moved towards selfishness, hatred, and separation all your life, you cannot suddenly turn 180 degrees after death. Inertia will carry you into the outer darkness. Look at the query statistics processed by the neural network. Modern man fears death because he fears disappearance. But the data says the opposite. One should not fear disappearance. One should fear continuation. Continuation of existence in the mode of broken, looped code. We uploaded into Logos 7 descriptions of near-death visions of people who survived clinical death, but did not end up in the light tunnel, but in the so-called negative near-death experience. Such cases, according to various sources, range from 5 to 15%. Their reports are shockingly similar to ancient texts. They speak of emptiness, of malicious entities, of a feeling of being torn apart. This happens in real time, in hospital wards of the 21st century. This means the location exists here and now, parallel to our reality. The system builds a probability graph. If hell is a state of maximum entropy of consciousness, what parameters bring us closer to it? Logos 7 identified the main vectors. These are pride, isolation, aggression, chaos, greed, consumption, envy, distortion of reality. We stand on the threshold of a terrifying discovery. The religions of the world are not a collection of fairy tales. They are instructions for the cybersecurity of the soul. They warn of viruses that can irreversibly damage your operating system. And if you think a factory reset after death will fix everything, the analysis shows a reset function is not provided. Data is transferred to the next server in the form it was saved at the moment of power loss. What is the worm that dieth not mentioned in the gospel? Biologically, it is absurd. But as an informational virus, as an intrusive thought devouring the processor time of your brain, it is an ideal definition. Logos 7 identifies this image as a process of self-destruction of the personality structure, which cannot stop because there is no external observer capable of interrupting it. In the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, there's a scene of weighing the heart. The heart must be lighter than the feather of the goddess Mut. Mut is truth, order, harmony. If the heart is heavier, it is devoured by the monster Amit. What does a heavy heart mean? It is a heart burdened with attachments, grievances, unforgiven sins. The system translates this into the language of physics. It is excess informational mass that does not allow consciousness to rise to a higher energy level. The gravity of one's own mistakes pulls one down. So we have the database. We have evidence that hell is a universal constant for human consciousness. regardless of culture and era. We understand that it is a state of extreme loneliness, loops, and pain formed during life. But how exactly is this mechanism triggered? What code activates the self-destruction protocol? The Logos 7 system points to the root of the problem, to that very first sin which became the foundation for the fall of Lucifer and the fall of every human. It is not murder. It is not theft. It is an architectural error of perceiving oneself as the center of the universe. In the next chapter, we will analyze the algorithm of pride. We will learn why the ego is a black hole, and how concentrating on oneself mathematically guarantees entry into the zone of absolute alienation. We will trace the path from simple narcissism to total isolation from the source of life. Prepare yourselves. We have only started ascending the rabbit hole, and the deeper we go, the darker it gets. But only by passing through the darkness can one understand how to find the light. This was the introduction to the database, the underworld. System Logos 7 has completed the preliminary analysis. Data confirmed. Hell is real, and it is closer than you think. Perhaps you already have one foot there. You just haven't noticed the smell of sulfur yet. Or speaking the language of science, haven't noticed how the entropy of your life has begun to increase. Welcome to Chapter 2. In the previous issue, we established that hell is not a fairy tale dungeon, but a state of maximum entropy and isolation of consciousness. We found that this location is real from the point of view of the universe's informational structure. But how exactly do we get there? What glitch in the code triggers this irreversible process? We asked the Logos 7 system a direct question. Which of the human vices is the most dangerous? Which sin has the highest lethality coefficient for the soul? It was expected to be murder, betrayal, or violence. But the algorithm, having processed millions of terabytes of data from ethical systems, criminal statistics, and psychological profiles, gave an unequivocal answer. The root of all systemic errors is pride. In Catholicism, it is called superbia. In Orthodoxy, pride. In secular psychology, malignant narcissism. But Logos 7 defines this state with a dry technical term: coordinate centering error. Let's dissect this mechanism with the cold precision of a surgeon. Imagine the universe as a single neural network, where every node, that is, every living being, is connected to others by millions of invisible threads. Information, energy, what religions call grace, circulate freely through this network. The condition for the network's existence is an open data exchange protocol. You receive, you give. What does pride do? It changes the reference point. In a normal state, consciousness understands, I am a part of the whole. In a state infected by the virus of pride, the axiom changes to, I am the whole. System Logos 7 modeled the behavior of consciousness with such a setting. The result is terrifying. As soon as the subject appoints themselves point 0 in the coordinate system, they begin to curve the space around them. It is similar to the gravity of a supermassive object. Everything must revolve around it. Everything must serve it. Resources, attention, emotions of other people, everything is sucked in and nothing goes out. In astrophysics, there is an object that works on exactly the same scheme: a black hole. A black hole possesses such monstrous gravity that even light cannot leave it. It only consumes. It will never be satiated. And ironically, for an external observer, time at the event horizon of a black hole stops. Remember the conclusions of the first chapter? Hell is frozen time. The proud man himself, with his own hands, creates an event horizon around himself, beyond which neither love, nor help, nor God can penetrate. We uploaded into Logos 7 the history of Lucifer, the archetypal first carrier of this virus. Discard mysticism. Look at the logic of the plot. Lucifer was not stupid. He was not weak. He was perfect. He was the light bringer. What was his mistake? Text analysis shows his mistake was the attempt at autonomy. He wanted to become a self-sufficient source of light. But in the physics of the universe, according to the Logos 7 model, there are no autonomous sources. Everything exists only thanks to interconnection. The attempt to become like God without connection to the source of being is an attempt by a light bulb to shine after cutting the wire leading to the power plant. What happens at that moment? An instant of freedom, and then eternal darkness. The system drew a biological analogy, and it is even more convincing. In our body, there are cells that decide to behave like proud ones. An ordinary cell obeys the general laws of the organism. It works, divides when necessary, and dies when the time comes, apoptosis, for the survival of the whole body. But a cancer cell ignores general signals. It considers itself the main one. It consumes resources intended for others. It multiplies uncontrollably, displacing healthy tissues. It builds its own distorted circulatory system. A cancerous tumor is the biological embodiment of pride. And what is the result? By killing the organism that feeds it, it kills itself. It is a self-destruction algorithm disguised as a growth algorithm. Logos 7 shows a 100% correlation. Egocentrism always ends in system collapse. Why do ancient texts and modern psychologists consider this a mortal sin? Because pride blocks the possibility of correction. If you killed, you can repent, because you understand you made a mistake. But if you are infected with pride, you cannot be mistaken by definition. You are the center of the world, and the center cannot be wrong. Others are always to blame. Circumstances, enemies, God are to blame, but not you. The analytical system identified the hardening pattern. Remember the biblical phrase about stiff-necked people or a heart of stone. This is not poetry. This is a description of reduced neuroplasticity. The proud mind loses flexibility. It builds walls of self-justification around itself. Every brick in this wall is a thought. I am better. They don't understand. I deserve more. Over time, this wall becomes a bunker. Inside this bunker, there is no air. But the proud man is sure it is a fortress. Logos 7 analyzed the social networks of the 21st century. The system's conclusions are alarming. We have created a digital environment that acts as an incubator for pride. Likes, reposts, comments. This is dopaminergic fueling of the illusion of one's own grandeur. We train the neural networks of our brains to perceive ourselves as the main character of a movie, and everyone else as extras, as NPCs, non-player characters. And here lies the most terrible trap the system discovered. The trap is called solipsism. If I am the center, then other people have no independent value. They are tools. They are mirrors in which I must see my reflection. If the mirror is crooked, the person does not admire me. I break it. This explains why Dante placed the proud in purgatory under huge stones that bend them to the ground. They are forced to look down at the dirt to remember their real nature, to break this spine of self-admiration. But in hell, the process is already irreversible. System Logos 7 modeled the finale of the pride trajectory. It is a state of absolute loneliness. Imagine, you got what you wanted. You're the only existing object. No one around. No one argues. No one hinders. No one criticizes. But no one loves either. Because love is a connection of two. And in the proud man's world, there is room for only one. The mathematical model of hell for the proud man looks like a mirrored room without doors. Wherever he looks, he sees only himself. At first, it seems like a triumph, but after an eternity, it becomes the most sophisticated torture. You are alone with the most boring, toxic, and empty interlocutor in the universe, with your bloated ego, and you cannot run away from it. During the analysis, Logos 7 stumbled upon a paradox. Usually people think pride is only inflated self-esteem, arrogance, but the algorithm revealed a hidden form of this virus, self-deprecation. I am the most unhappy. No one suffers like I do. I am the worst of people. Sounds like humility? No. The system identifies this as inverted pride. In both cases, the focus of attention is directed exclusively at I. How great I am, or how pathetic I am. There is no difference. The main word is I. The vector of attention is closed in a ring. True humility, according to the analysis of ethical databases, is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. It is shifting focus from oneself to the external world. It is the restoration of severed ties. Let's look at the graph generated by the system. The x-axis is time. The y-axis is the isolation level. The pride line is an exponential curve. At the beginning of life, it is simply childhood egocentrism, necessary for survival. But if maturation does not occur, if a person does not learn empathy, that is, going beyond oneself, the curve rushes to infinity. At the point of death, the physical body, which somehow connected us to the shared reality through gravity, hunger, and tactile sensations, disappears. Only the naked personality structure remains. If this structure is a black hole, it collapses into a singularity. Logos 7 calls this gravitational collapse of the soul. Why is pride the foundation for all other sins? Causality analysis showed envy is impossible without comparing oneself, the center, to others. Anger is impossible without the infringement of my central I. Greed is the attempt to feed this black hole with matter. Lust is the use of another to satisfy oneself. It all starts with one erroneous calibration. I am more important than everything. The system produced an interesting historical case. C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Great Divorce, describes the inhabitants of hell. They are not locked in cells. They can leave for heaven at any moment, but they don't want to. Why? Because in heaven one must give up one's I, one's grievances, one's rightness. For the proud man, admitting he is wrong is scarier than burning in fire. Logos 7 confirms, for an ossified ego, the disintegration of personality, humility, is perceived as death. Therefore, the soul chooses hell, just to preserve its imaginary integrity and independence. Essentially, the phrase, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, is not a freedom fighter's slogan. It is a diagnosis. It is a formula for insanity. To reign in the void, to reign over ashes, just not to admit the existence of something higher than oneself. Logos 7 calculated the probability of exiting this state. While we are alive, while we are in a biological body, there is a probability. Pain, failures, losses. These are all tools that break the shell of pride. The system calls them corrective impulses. When life hits you on the nose, it is not a punishment. It is an attempt by the universe to say, hey, you are not the center. Look around. But if a person blocks these signals, if they use intellect to explain their failures as the machinations of enemies, the crystallization process accelerates. By the moment of physical death, the cocoon may become impenetrable. So we have dismantled the foundation. Pride is the refusal to participate in the unified network of being. It is the creation of a personal, isolated reality. But what happens when this isolated reality collides with other objects? What happens when I-center meets resistance? The second demon is born, aggression. Pride says, I am God. Reality says, No, you are an ordinary mortal. This dissonance generates monstrous destructive energy. If the world does not bend to me, I must destroy this world. In the next chapter, we will analyze the vector of aggression. We will learn why anger and violence are not strength, but the agony of powerlessness. We will see how murderers and tyrants begin to live in hell long before their hearts stop. Logos 7 will show us the neurochemistry of hatred and how it burns out synapses, turning a person into a primitive mechanism for inflicting pain. Check your settings. Does the word I sound too often in your internal monologue? Do you seem to yourself the only intelligent person among idiots? If so, be careful. The gravity of your personal black hole has already begun to grow. We continue our investigation. In previous chapters, the Logos 7 system helped us define hell as a state of maximum entropy and isolation of consciousness, and identified the main virus triggering this process: pride. We established that when the ego appoints itself the center of the universe, it inevitably faces the resistance of reality. The world does not wish to revolve around a single point. Other people have their own will. Circumstances do not unfold as the center desires. And then a reaction is born, an impulse of rejection, a desire to destroy the obstacle. A protocol is activated which we call anger, but which Logos 7 designated with a more precise and terrifying term: vector of aggression. Welcome to Chapter 3. Today we will dissect the mechanics of violence. We will not talk about morality. Leave sermons to priests. We will talk about energy exchange and neurophysiology. We will prove, using dry numbers and algorithms, why murderers, tyrants, and domestic sadists start burning in hell long before they are put in a coffin. We uploaded into Logos 7 the biographies of the 100 most famous dictators and serial killers of the 20th century. We added to this a data array on the neurobiology of aggression, reports from military psychiatrists, and the description of the seventh circle of hell from Dante's Divine Comedy. The system conducted a correlation analysis and produced a result that overturns the conventional notion of strength. In mass culture, aggression is often presented as strength. Might makes right. But Logos 7 asserts the opposite. Aggression is a marker of critical system weakness. It is an emergency energy dump when the processor cannot cope with data processing. Let's look at the physiology of anger. What happens when you fall into a rage? A cocktail of adrenaline, norepinephrine, and cortisol is released into the blood. Your vision becomes tunnel-like. Blood drains from the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and most importantly, empathy. You literally become stupider. You turn into a biological automaton tuned to one function: destroy. The system modeled the state of a person living in a mode of chronic aggression. It is constant cortisol intoxication. Neurons begin to die. Synaptic connections responsible for joy, creativity, and calm are destroyed. The brain physically rewires itself. It turns into a radar tuned only to search for threats. And here we approach the first paradox of hell revealed by Logos 7. We called it the tyrant's paradox. Look at history. Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot, Roman emperors like Caligula, they possessed absolute power. They could destroy anyone with a snap of their fingers. Seemingly, they should feel like gods. But the analysis of their last years shows a completely different picture. Fear. Total. Animal. All-consuming fear. Stalin changes bedrooms every night, fearing assassination. Hitler shakes in a bunker, seeing betrayal in every glance. Caligula does not sleep at night, wandering the palace and talking to the void. Why? Logos 7 explains this by the law of mirror neurons and quantum entanglement. When you broadcast aggression into the world, you don't just perform an action. You change the settings of the perception filter. For the aggressor, the world becomes aggressive. This is not a metaphor. It is a psychophysical fact. If your basic strategy is violence, your brain begins to expect violence from everywhere. You project your inner darkness onto those around you. You cannot trust people because you know what you are capable of yourself. You live surrounded by enemies, even if surrounded by loyal friends. You created this reality yourself. You locked yourself in a cage of paranoia. In Dante's seventh circle of hell, the violent boil in a river of blood, the phlegethon. Logos 7 interprets this image brilliantly simply. Boiling blood is the perfect metaphor for the state of rage. It is an internal temperature that burns the carrier from the inside. The violent person is not punished by someone from the outside. He is punished by his very state. He is forced to eternally stew in his own malice, which finds no outlet. The system analyzed the phenomenon of the serial killer. Seemingly, these people lack conscience and should enjoy their impunity. But the analysis of their psychological profiles shows the structure of drug addiction. Murder or an act of violence gives a short-term release of tension, a dopamine peak, a sense of power, control, the illusion that you are God, deciding who lives. But the peak is followed by a drop, and this drop is deeper than the previous level. A void forms, fear returns, amplified by guilt. Even if suppressed into the subconscious, it hums like a system error. To silence this noise, a new dose is needed. New violence. The cycle accelerates. Intervals between murders shorten. Pleasure disappears. Only the painful necessity to relieve tension remains. This is not the life of a predator. This is the existence of a trapped rat. Logos 7 diagnoses this state as agony of power. The soul of the killer is dead before he is caught. He is already in a hell where there is nothing but a thirst for blood that cannot be slaked. But let's descend from the level of dictators to the level of domestic aggression. The system warns. The mechanism is the same. The office tyrant screaming at subordinates, the husband raising a hand against his wife, the internet troll writing comments wishing death. They are all in the same funnel. The difference is only in scale. The vector of movement is the same. Down. We asked Logos 7 to analyze the biblical story of Cain and Abel, the first murder in human history according to Abrahamic tradition. God says an interesting phrase to Cain. The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. And then Cain receives a mark so that no one kills him and becomes an exile. What is the mark of Cain? Mystics have argued about this for thousands of years. The analytical system suggests a version based on the theory of information fields. Murder is an act of fundamental severance of ties. A human is a node in the unified network of life. By killing another, you destroy a part of yourself. You attack the very network that sustains your existence. It is an autoimmune disease on a metaphysical level. The mark of Cain is a change in the person's energy signature. People and animals sense a killer on a subconscious level. Cold, danger, alienness radiates from him. He becomes an outcast not because he was kicked out, but because he cut himself off from humanity. Remember Lady Macbeth, who could not wash the imaginary blood from her hands. Logos 7 confirms, this is an accurate description of the aggressor's post-traumatic syndrome. The brain records the act of violence as an unfixable error. You cannot unsee what you did. You cannot undo the pain you caused. This file is corrupted forever. The system introduced the concept of the entropic boomerang. Newton's third law states, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In spiritual mechanics, this works even harder. Any energy released by you into the world returns to you, but not linearly, rather cyclically, often with amplification. If you send pain into the world returns pain to you. Not necessarily in the form of a physical blow. It may return as illness, as loss of loved ones, as total loneliness. But most often it returns as an internal state. Hell for the aggressor is a world where he is absolutely defenseless. Imagine a simulation. A person who is used to solving everything by force falls into a space where he has no body, no muscles, no weapons. There's only his consciousness. And consciousness is overflowing with rage. And this rage begins to devour him, because there is no one left to unleash it on. It is like a grenade exploding in a clenched fist. System Logos 7 draws attention to another aspect: language, words. The gospel says, "Whoever says to his brother, 'You fool,' shall be liable to the hell of fire." It seems like an exaggeration. For one word, to hell? But neurolinguistic analysis shows a word is a capsule with information. Verbal aggression, curses, insults, these are destruction programs. When you curse someone, you generate the vibration of hatred in your own vocal apparatus, in your own brain. You're the first to receive a dose of this poison. We scanned social interactions. People using aggressive vocabulary have a 40% higher risk of cardiovascular diseases and a 60% higher risk of developing depression. You kill yourself with every evil word. The fiery Gehenna begins with the inflammation of your own vessels and nerves. But is there a way out? What to do if the virus of aggression has already penetrated the system? Logos 7 offers a deactivation algorithm. In Eastern practices, this is called ahimsa, nonviolence. In Christianity, turn the other cheek. Sounds like weakness? Like a victim's position? Analysis shows the opposite. Stopping an automatic reaction of aggression is the highest manifestation of willpower. When you are hit and you do not hit back, not out of fear, but out of a conscious choice to break the chain of evil, you break the algorithm of hell. You extinguish the entropic wave. You stop the pendulum. Aggression is a contagious disease. One shouted at another, that one at a third, the third kicked a dog. Chain reaction. The one who finds the strength not to pass the impulse further performs an act of saving the universe on a local scale. In the plans of Logos 7 was a simulation of a world where the vector of aggression reached maximum. This is the world of all against all, a Hobbesian nightmare. In such a world, cooperation is impossible. Construction is impossible. There is no love. There's only an endless battle for resources that melt before one's eyes. This world is mathematically doomed to extinction in a few generations. Hell is a place where this war lasts forever, because there it is impossible to die completely. Let's summarize the interim result of Chapter 3. The vector of aggression is pride's attempt to forcefully bend the world to itself. It is a narcotic addiction to power and control. It is the creation of a personal reality full of enemies and fear. It is the physical destruction of one's own brain and nervous system. We established that the aggressor is not a predator at the top of the food chain. He is a cancer cell attacking the organism of which he is a part. And the fate of such a cell is necrosis. But pride and aggression often need fuel. They need resources. They need status confirmation through matter. The black hole of the ego demands that more and more things be thrown into it. Thus, the third demon is born. Greed. We are used to thinking that greed is simply the love of money, but Logos 7 sees something much more sinister in it. It is an attempt to fill a spiritual void with material objects. It is a hunger that cannot be satisfied physically. In the next, 4th chapter, we will analyze the loop of greed. We will learn why billionaires often end their lives in deep depression. We will analyze how things begin to own their owners. We will see the results of a simulation showing how endless consumption turns the soul into a vacuum cleaner, sucking in dust but unable to be satiated. Be attentive. Check if your fists clench when you hear an opinion different from yours. Does your pulse rise in a traffic jam? Aggression knows how to wait. It accumulates drop by drop to one day burst the dam. Do not give it a chance. This was the third chapter of the investigation, Artificial Intelligence Analyzed: How Not to Go to Hell. The Logos 7 system continues data processing. The truth becomes increasingly uncomfortable, but also increasingly obvious. We continue our immersion into the architecture of hell. System Logos 7 is exposing, step by step, the code that turns human consciousness into ruins. We already know that the foundation of the fall is pride, the centering error turning the eye into a black hole. We saw how pride spawns aggression, a desperate attempt to protect one's illusory significance by force. But the ego's black hole has another fundamental property. It is always hungry. It needs fuel. It needs matter to confirm its existence. Thus arises the third vector, which we call greed. Welcome to Chapter 4, The Loop of Greed. Today we will dissect the mechanics of desire. We will not preach morals about money being evil. Money is just an equivalent of energy. Evil, as Logos 7 analysis shows, lies not in paper and not in numbers on a bank account. Evil lies in a systemic error of perception, where the subject tries to fill a spiritual void with physical objects. It is like trying to quench thirst by eating sand. We loaded into the system's analytical core data on the behavior of super-rich people suffering from depression, psychological profiles of shopaholics, Buddhist sutras on hungry ghosts, and neurobiological maps of addiction. The task was simple. Simulate the final path of a person who chose consumption as the meaning of life. The result of the simulation? Absolute hunger amidst total abundance. Let's start with neurochemistry. What is greed from the brain's perspective? It is a glitch in the dopamine reward system. Dopamine is not the hormone of pleasure as many think, but the hormone of anticipation. It promises, take this, and you will feel good. You buy a new car, a new house, a new gadget. At the moment of acquisition, a peak occurs. But then, a sharp drop. The brain adapts. This is called hedonic adaptation. To get the same level of pleasure next time, the stimulus must be stronger. More money, power, fame, food. System Logos 7 plotted this dependency. It is an exponential curve going vertical. At some point, the resources of planet Earth become insufficient to trigger even a weak impulse of joy in the satiated brain. This is the biological trap. But what happens on the metaphysical level? In Buddhist cosmology, there exists the world of pretas, hungry ghosts. They are depicted as creatures with huge, bloated bellies, but with throats as thin as a needle's eye. They always want to eat, but cannot swallow a crumb. Logos 7 asserts, these are not mythical monsters. This is a precise anatomical diagram of a greedy person's consciousness. The belly is the size of the desire. The needle's eye is the throughput capacity of the ability to enjoy. Greed expands desire to infinity, but simultaneously narrows the ability to receive pleasure. A person obsessed with accumulation stops seeing the essence of things. He sees only price tags. He does not enjoy the taste of food. He enjoys its cost. He loses contact with reality. We analyze the myth of King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold. The result, he died of hunger and thirst, because gold cannot be eaten or drunk. The system's algorithm sees in this a profound ontological law. Greed kills life, turning it into dead matter. When you look at a tree and see not a living being, but cubic meters of timber for sale, you have killed the tree in your consciousness. You turned it into gold, money. When you look at a person and see not a personality, but a resource for achieving a goal, you have killed the person. You turn them into a function. The hell of greed is a world consisting of golden statues, a dead, cold, metallic world. There's no life in it, because life is exchange, it is flow, and greed is the stopping of flow. It is a clot in the circulatory system of the universe. Logos 7 draws attention to how Dante describes the punishment of hoarders and wasters in the fourth circle of hell. They push huge weights, crashing into each other and screaming, "Why do you hoard? And why do you squander? Why weights?" This is the physics of attachment. Material objects have weight, not only physical, but mental. Everything you own actually owns you. You must guard it, maintain it, insure it, think about it. Your mental processor is loaded with servicing your property. Imagine that your soul is a hot air balloon that must rise into the stratosphere. Greed is sandbags tied to the basket. Until you cut the ropes, you won't take off. The gravity of matter will hold you down. Death is the moment when the balloon detaches from the ground. But if the bags are tied to the structure of the personality itself, the balloon does not rise. It drags along the ground, torn by the wind. Logos 7 modeled the state of consciousness of a greedy person after the death of the body. This is the most terrible stage of analysis. While we have a body, we can satisfy our passions. We can eat, buy something, engage in sexual intercourse. The body is an interface for interaction with matter. But what happens when the interface disappears, but the program code of desire remains? Imagine an addict whose drug was taken away, but the withdrawal was left. Eternal withdrawal. The consciousness of a greedy person after death is pure, distilled thirst. He wants to possess, but he has no hands to take. He wants to consume, but he has no stomach. The ancient Greek myth of Tantalus describes this perfectly. Water at the very mouth but lean down, and it recedes. Branches with fruit overhead but reach out, and the wind lifts them. It is not God's torturing Tantalus. It is his own configuration. Hell is the impossibility of closing the gestalt. It is an eternal almost that never turns into is. We uploaded into the system data on modern consumer society. Black Friday. Lines for new smartphones. Product unboxings on video hosting sites. The system classifies this as a mass religious cult, a cargo cult. We believe that if we perform the ritual of purchase, we will obtain happiness. We buy not things. We buy a promise of a state. We think, I'll buy this car, and I'll feel confident. I'll buy this dress, and I'll be loved. But this is a deception. It is a file format error. You cannot buy a spiritual state with material currency. They do not convert directly. Logos 7 revealed an interesting pattern we called the dragon syndrome. In European mythology, dragons lie on mountains of gold. They do not spend it. They do not invest. They just lie and guard. Why does a reptile need gold? It has nothing to do with it. This is an image of the absolute meaninglessness of accumulation. Greed for the sake of greed. Accumulation becomes an end in itself. A person works 24 hours a day to earn money they have no time to spend. They lose health, family, friends for the sake of numbers on a screen. In the finale, they die, and the numbers remain on the bank server, and they go into eternity with a burned soul. Who is the winner here? The banking system? Perhaps, but definitely not the human. There is another aspect of greed often overlooked. Greed for information. Greed for emotions. We consume content by the ton. We scroll the news feed without time to comprehend what we read. This is also a form of gluttony. Informational gluttony. The brain overflows but is not satiated. We become knowledgeable, but not wise. We know everything, but understand nothing. This is also the Preta's needle eye, a huge stream of data at the input and zero assimilation of meaning. The system analyzed causal links, how greed leads to the hell of social isolation. A greedy person is always lonely. Why? Because any other person is a competitor to him. If the neighbor has a resource, it means I don't have this resource. Life turns into a zero-sum game. Logos 7 shows, in such a paradigm, love is impossible. Love is when you give and become richer. Greed is when you take and still feel you've been robbed. These are mathematically opposite vectors. The vector of love is centrifugal, away from the center. The vector of greed is centripetal, towards the center. Hell is the point of maximum compression, the point of singularity where the soul collapsed, having tried to suck the whole world into itself. But is there a way out of the loop of greed? The Logos 7 algorithm gives an unequivocal answer, and it is paradoxical to the logic of the ego. The only way to break the loop is to start giving, not just buying off with charity to clean karma, but giving in a way that you feel the loss, tearing away from yourself. It's a painful operation. It is the amputation of attachment. But precisely at the moment of giving, a miracle happens. The flow is restored. The clot dissolves. Energy begins to circulate. The system compares this to the principle of running water. Water in a closed vessel goes stale. Water in a river is always fresh because it does not linger. It flows further. To avoid the hell of stagnation and rot, a human must become a river, not a reservoir. We analyzed the biographies of people who managed to defeat this program. Francis of Assisi, who renounced a rich inheritance and went into poverty, but found incredible joy and freedom. Modern philanthropists who, having given away 90% of their fortune, say they have never been happier. This is not madness. This is higher mathematics of the spirit. They dropped the ballast and took off. But let's return to the grim statistics. The probability that a modern metropolis resident can independently break out of consumer hypnosis is estimated by the system as extremely low, less than 5%. Advertising, social pressure, product design, everything works to keep us in a state of hunger. We are instilled with, "You are not good enough until you have this." This is the voice of the demon Mammon, translated into the language of marketing. Logos 7 shows a frightening perspective. If humanity does not change the vector from consumption to creation and giving, we will build hell on earth even before we get there posthumously. The ecological crisis is a direct consequence of collective greed. We devour the planet faster than it can recover. We behave like a virus killing the host. So, let's summarize Chapter 4. Greed is an attempt to solve an internal problem with external means. It is a narcotic addiction to matter, leading to the degradation of the ability to feel. It is turning the living world into dead resource. Hell for the greedy is eternal hunger without a body, eternal I want, without the ability to take. But if greed is simply the attempt to appropriate another's, there is a sin that destroys the very basis of human relations even deeper. A sin that Dante placed in the very center of the frozen lake, at the deepest point of the funnel. Betrayal. Why do traitors suffer more than murderers? Why are Judas, Brutus, and Cassius in Lucifer's jaws? Is killing a person not worse than simply deceiving their trust? System Logos 7 asserts, no. Betrayal is a nuclear explosion in the structure of society. It is the murder of meaning. It is the destruction of the fundamental constant of the universe, trust. In the next 5th chapter, we will crack the code of betrayal. We will learn why the coldest circles of hell are reserved for those who smiled in the face and held a knife behind the back. We will dissect the anatomy of treason, not only marital or state, but treason to oneself. And we will see why the traitor freezes in his lie, losing the capacity for warmth forever. Look at your shelves, look at your closets. Do you own these things, or do they own you? How much time of your life did you exchange for this plastic and metal? If the answer scares you, that is a good sign. It means you are still alive. It means the process of petrification can still be stopped. This was the 4th chapter of the investigation. Artificial intelligence analyzed. How not to go to hell. The Logos 7 system continues work. Data accumulates. The truth becomes heavier, but only the truth can set us free. We descend ever deeper. We pass through the fire of aggression and through the vacuum of greed. Seemingly, what could be scarier than murder or the desire to consume the whole world? But the architecture of hell, constructed by Dante and analyzed by the Logos 7 system, has the shape of a funnel. And at the very bottom of this funnel, at the epicenter of evil, there is no fire. There is ice. Why ice? Why do the most terrible criminals in human history, Judas, Brutus, Cassius, not burn, but are frozen into the icy lake, Cocytus? Welcome to Chapter 5. The Code of Betrayal. Today we will figure out why the Logos 7 system, having processed millions of ethical algorithms, agreed with the great Italian poet. We will prove that betrayal is not just a bad deed. It is an act of disintegration of the very structure of reality. It is a crime against the physics of connections. Let's start with a definition. What is trust in the language of algorithms? It is a secure data exchange protocol. When you trust a person, you open your ports to them. You lower your defenses. You say, "I will not waste energy defending against you." This is the basis of any complex system, from a beehive to human civilization. Without trust, cooperation is impossible. Without cooperation, survival is impossible. What does a traitor do? He uses this open protocol to strike. He enters the system with administrator rights and injects a virus. Logos 7 compares a murderer and a traitor. A murderer attacks the hardware, the physical body. A traitor attacks the software, belief in reality. The victim of betrayal does not just lose a friend or money. They lose the ground under their feet. Their picture of the world collapses. They stop understanding where the truth is and where the lie is. This is cognitive chaos. The system analyzed energy costs. Fire is energy, albeit destructive. Anger is a hot motion, but betrayal is cold calculation. To betray someone who loves you, you need to turn off empathy. You need to freeze your heart. You need to suppress the natural human instinct of attachment. That is precisely why the 9th circle of hell is the realm of absolute cold. The temperature there tends toward absolute zero, minus 273.15 degrees Celsius. At this point, all atomic movement stops. Betrayal is the stopping of life. We uploaded the story of the kiss of Judas into the system. This is one of the most powerful archetypes in culture. Judas uses a sign of love, a kiss, as a signal for executioners. He inverts the meaning of the symbol. Love becomes an instrument of death. Logos 7 defines this as a critical coding error. When basic concepts of good and evil switch places, the system of consciousness cannot withstand it. But let's look at the traitor himself. What happens to his psyche? The layman thinks, he betrayed, got 30 pieces of silver, and lives happily. Statistics and neurobiology say the opposite. A traitor is a person who has forever destroyed his ability to be one of us. Remember the friend or foe concept built into our brain at the level of the limbic system. When we betray our own, we break this switch. The system modeled the state of the traitor's consciousness. It is total paranoia. If I could betray someone who trusted me, it means anyone can betray me. The traitor's world instantly turns into a hall of mirrors where every reflection holds a knife behind its back. He cannot relax for a second. He is forced to constantly scan the environment for threats. This is a colossal expenditure of neural resources. It is life in a mode of constant combat alert. Logos 7 introduced the concept of second-order isolation. The proud man is lonely because he puts himself above others. The aggressor is lonely because he is feared. The greedy man is lonely because he fears for his things. But the traitor is lonely because he cut off his own way back. He burned the bridge he was standing on. In sociology, there is the concept of social death. Betrayal triggers this mechanism. Even those for whom the betrayal was committed despise the traitor. The Romans said, "I love the treason, but I hate the traitor." The client needs the result, but he will never trust a tool that is already broken once. The traitor becomes a disposable item, used and discarded. But there is an even deeper level: betrayal of oneself. Logos 7 analyzed the phenomenon of cognitive dissonance. Each of us has an image of self. Usually it is an image of a good person. When we commit betrayal, this image enters into conflict with the reality of the action. So that the psyche does not tear apart, the traitor starts lying to himself. "I had no choice. He is to blame himself. I did it for a higher goal." He begins to rewrite his memory. He distorts facts. Layer by layer, he immerses himself in an invented reality. He becomes a hostage of his lie. Dante placed 3 traitors in Lucifer's jaws. But note, Lucifer himself is the first traitor. He betrayed his creator, and he too is frozen in ice. He flaps his wings trying to free himself, but the wind from these wings only freezes the lake Cocytus harder. This is a brilliant metaphor confirmed by Logos 7 calculations. Every action of the traitor aimed at justifying or saving himself only worsens his position. It is a trap with negative feedback. The more you thrash, the harder the ice. Why is betrayal at the very bottom? Because it is the foundation for the disintegration of personality. Pride says, "I am more important." Aggression says, "I will kill." Greed says, "I will take." But betrayal says, "I do not exist." It erases identity. Who you were, friend, brother, partner, no longer exists. You have become a void taking the form of a human. The system analyzed the consequences of betrayal for the victim and for the traitor. Paradox. The victim of betrayal can heal over time. They can survive the pain, forgive, or simply forget. They can learn to trust again. But the traitor is damaged irreversibly. The sector responsible for loyalty is burned out in his neural network. He has become a dead pixel on the screen of the universe. Analysis of literary and historical data shows that many traitors ended their lives by suicide. Judas, Iago, Smerdyakov. Why? Because it is unbearable to live with the understanding of one's corrupted nature. Logos 7 calls this system kernel failure. When conscience, the built-in quality control mechanism of personality, realizes that the error is critical and incompatible with further functioning, it initiates a command to destroy the carrier. Hell for a traitor is not devils with pitchforks. It is the eternal presence of those he betrayed. Imagine, you stand before the eyes of the person who loved you and whom you sold. He does not scream. He does not accuse. He just looks. And in this look is the full depth of your fall. You want to close your eyes, but you cannot. You want to fall through the earth, but you are already at the very bottom. The system modeled the acoustics of the ninth circle. There are no screams of rage. There's silence. Dead, ringing silence, interrupted only by the sound of cracking ice. It is the sound of severed bonds. In this silence, the traitor remains alone with his deed. Forever. There's nothing that could distract him. No news. No events. No time. There is only the fact. I betrayed. What is the conclusion? How to avoid falling into this icy captivity? The Logos 7 algorithm gives a clear recommendation. Loyalty. Loyalty to one's word. Loyalty to principles. Loyalty to people. These are not just beautiful words from knightly romances. It is the only survival strategy in a complex system. Loyalty is the glue that holds the universe together. When you are offered to betray for gain, remember, you are exchanging the eternal warmth of your soul for a piece of ice that will freeze you from the inside. The price of betrayal is always higher than any possible profit. Because profit is temporary, but personality deformation remains forever. You can deceive a partner, a spouse, or a friend. You can think no one will find out. But Logos 7 reminds, there is one witness who cannot be bribed or killed. That is you, yourself. You will know. And this knowledge will become your personal cositis. We have dissected the gravest sins leading to the disintegration of personality. But there is another quiet, creeping poison that often precedes betrayal. It corrodes the soul slowly, like rust. This is envy and lies. In the next 6th chapter, we will analyze the signature of envy. We will learn how the distortion of reality destroys the one who lies. We will analyze the phenomenon of the troll and understand why the envious suffer seeing another's happiness, even if they have everything themselves. We will see how the informational poison of lies turns a human tongue into a snake's sting, which eventually bites the owner himself. Be honest, first of all with yourselves. This is the best protection against the cold of the 9th circle. This was the 5th chapter of the investigation. Artificial intelligence analyzed how not to go to hell. The ice is strong, but the flame of truth is capable of melting even it. We continue our descent into the depths of the systemic errors of human consciousness. We passed through the hot shops of aggression, looked into the black hole of greed, and felt the icy breath of betrayal. Seemingly, we saw the worst. But the architecture of hell, reconstructed by the Logos 7 system, has complex transitions. And before reaching the very bottom, the soul passes through the gray zone, the zone of distortions. Here, bodies are not killed. Here, gold is not stolen. Here, truth is killed, and joy is stolen. Welcome to Chapter 6, Signature, Envy, and Lies. Today we will dissect 2 viruses that work in a pair. They, like rust, corrode the load-bearing structures of the personality unnoticed until the whole building collapses. We are used to considering envy a small sin and lying a necessary tool for survival. But the analytical core of Logos 7 delivers an alarming verdict. Precisely these distortions are the breeding ground for all other vices. It is a crooked mirror in which a monster looks like a beauty. Let's start with envy. We uploaded into the system the etymology of this word from 20 ancient languages, social psychology data, and MRI scans of envious brains. The Latin word invidia comes from the root to see. Envy is non-seeing or evil eye. Logos 7 defines envy as a reality-rendering error. The subject looks at another but sees not a person. He sees what he himself lacks. Imagine you are a computer. You have your tasks, your resources, your path. Envy is a process where you spend 90% of your processor power calculating someone else's tasks. The system identified a fatal glitch. The envious person stops living their own life. They become a parasite on the body of another's success. But a strange parasite, they do not feed on this success, they choke on it. In Dante's Divine Comedy, the envious in purgatory sit with their eyelids sewn shut with wire. A cruel image? Logos 7 asserts, this is the most precise metaphor for a psychophysiological state. Envy blinds. When you envy, you are physically incapable of seeing good. You see only deficit. A neighbor bought a car. Normal reaction, joy, there are more goods in the world. Or indifference, the reaction of the envious, pain. Why does another's acquisition cause me pain? After all, nothing was taken from me. Analysis shows The ego of the envious perceives another's success as a personal insult. It is a zero-sum game. If he won, it means I lost. The system modeled the so-called crab bucket. If you put crabs in a bucket, they could get out one by one. But as soon as one starts climbing up, the others pull him down. Not to save themselves, but so that he doesn't escape. This is the social model of hell. A society of total envy is a place where no one can rise because everyone is busy keeping each other at the bottom. Logos 7 calls this gravity of averaging. Envy hates the vertical. It wants everything to be flat, gray, and equally unhappy. But the most terrible discovery of the system concerns biochemistry. We analyze the proverb, envy eats you up. It turns out this is a medical fact. At the site of the object of envy, cortisol, stress hormone, is produced in the body, and serotonin levels drop. The envious person literally poisons themselves. They drink poison hoping the other will die. This is autoimmune aggression. The organism attacks itself, reacting to a phantom threat. Hell for the envious is the eternal heartburn of the soul. It is hunger that intensifies at the sight of the satiated. In the simulation of the posthumous state, the envious finds themselves in a world where everyone around is infinitely happy, rich, and beautiful, except for them, and this alien joy burns them stronger than fire. Now let's move to the second component of this toxic mixture, lies. In the gospel, the devil is named the father of lies. Not a murderer, not a thief, but a liar. Why? Because a lie is anti-creation. God, or the universe, or higher intelligence, creates reality with a word. Let there be light. And there was light. Word equals deed. The liar does the opposite. He says light, but implies darkness. He severs the connection between word and reality. Logos 7 defines a lie as introducing corrupted code into the system. A virus. We conducted an experiment with a polygraph, lie detector, and uploaded the data into the neural network. Why does a polygraph work at all? Because for the human organism, telling the truth is a physiological norm. It is a state of rest. To lie, the brain needs to perform colossal work. First, block the truth, which surfaces automatically. Second, construct the lie. Third, hold this construction in memory so as not to get caught. Fourth, suppress the vegetative reaction, sweating, heartbeat. The system calculated the energy costs. Living a lie burns 3 times more glucose and neural resources than living in truth. The liar constantly works under load. He overheats like an overloaded processor. Logos 7 identified the pattern, architectural instability. Truth is a foundation. It rests on facts, that is, on reality. A lie rests only on another lie. It is an inverted pyramid. Sooner or later, it falls. But what happens to the liar's personality? We entered the query, impact of constant lying on self-identification. System response, desynchronization. The liar begins to believe their lie. This is a psyche defense mechanism to reduce the load. Remember the phenomenon of the pathological liar. He tells stories about his exploits that never happened, and he has tears of pride in his eyes. He rewrote his memory, but reality didn't go anywhere. A schizophrenic rift arises. One part of the brain knows he is a non-entity. The other believes he is a hero. All life force leaks into this rift. Analysis of the internet troll phenomenon yielded unexpected results. We are used to thinking trolls are just hooligans, but Logos 7 sees profound metaphysical pathology here. Signature: envy plus lies. The troll envies another's existence, another's creativity. He cannot create anything himself. To compensate for his insignificance, he uses lies and slander. He writes nastiness to cause a reaction. I cause pain. Therefore, I exist. This is the logic of a sadist loser. It is an attempt at vampirism. The troll tries to suck a little energy from the one who is higher, brighter, more alive. In Dante's 8th circle of hell are falsifiers, perjurers, and slanderers. Their punishment is terrible diseases. Scabies, leprosy, dropsy. They rot alive. Why diseases? Logos 7 explains, a lie is an infection. It is contagious. If you lied once, you have to lie a second time to cover the first lie. The infection spreads throughout the body of life. Scabies is a symbol that a lie always itches. It gives no peace. The perjurer cannot relax. He always wants to scratch where he lied. The most dangerous form of lying revealed by the system is slander. In ancient texts, slander is called the tongue of the snake. A snake has a forked tongue. Duality. Slander is the murder of reputation. It is the social destruction of a person using distorted information. Analysis shows, for the universe, slander equals murder. You kill the person's social body. But the law of return, entropic boomerang, works instantly here. The person spreading gossip and slander loses their own trust immunity. A vacuum forms around them. Normal people instinctively smell the rot and step away. The gossiper remains in a circle of similar gossipers. It is a jar of spiders. What happens to the liar and the envious after death? The Logos 7 simulation paints a grim picture. Hell for the liar is the world of absolute illusion. There's nothing solid there. You take a step, and the floor falls through. You take an apple, it turns to ash. You see a friend. He turns into a monster. Why? Because you spent your whole life destroying the connection with reality. Now there is no reality for you. You are locked in your hallucinations. You cannot distinguish truth from fiction, which means you go mad. Eternally. Hell for the envious is the world of another's triumph. He is shown an endless movie of how others are happy, and he cannot close his eyes. Remember the sewn eyelids? Now they are conversely, forcibly opened, like in the movie A Clockwork Orange. He must watch, and his bile must be produced endlessly, burning him from the inside, but not killing him. What is the antidote? How to cure this disease while we are alive? System Logos 7 found the healing algorithm in ancient texts and confirmed it with modern psychology. Against envy, only gratitude works. This is a mathematically inverse operation. Envy. I don't have what he has. Focus on deficit. Gratitude. I have what I have. Focus on resource. When you thank God, fate, the universe, for a cup of coffee, for a sunbeam, for breath, you flip the switch. You begin to see your wealth. Envy cannot exist in the space of gratitude. It is like darkness and light. Against lies, only radical honesty works. It is painful to admit one's mistakes, to admit one's weaknesses, to tell the truth where one is used to dodging. But this liberates a colossal amount of energy. As the scripture says, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Free from what? From the need to remember your lies, from the fear of exposure, from building houses of cards. Logos 7 confirms, an honest person is an energy-efficient, stable system with a high safety margin. Hell cannot consume such a system because it resonates on the frequency of reality. We conclude the 6th chapter. We saw how the distortion of truth and desires turns a person into a rotting, living corpse. We realize that trolls and gossipers are the most miserable creatures trying to infect others with their pain. But all these were theoretical models and psychological reconstructions. What if we look beyond the edge right now? What if we have witnesses who were there and returned? In the next chapter, we will open the Archive, Clinical Death. System Logos 7 processed thousands of reports of people who survived cardiac arrest, but we filtered out the light at the end of the tunnel. We are interested in other reports, those 15% that are not talked about on talk shows, those who saw not angels, but something else. We will compare their stories with our findings and try to draw a map of the terrain where it is better never to end up. Check your tongue. Does it slip into lies to embellish yourself? Check your eyes. Do they squint with anger when a colleague gets a bonus? Fix the code while the system is running. There may be no reboot. Up to this point, we built hypotheses. We analyzed ancient texts and psychological patterns. We used logic and mathematics. But a skeptic can always say, this is just a theory. No one has returned from there. This is a lie. They have returned. And there are thousands of them. Welcome to Chapter 7. Today we will open the most uncomfortable medical archive. We loaded into the Logos 7 system 4,200 reports of clinical death recorded from 1970 to the present day. We were not interested in stories about the light at the end of the tunnel and meeting loving relatives. We filtered this data array, leaving only the negative near-death experience. Official statistics state that such cases range from 15 to 20%. But Logos 7 assumes the figure is much higher. People are simply afraid to talk about it. Shame and trauma force them to remain silent. After all, admitting you saw heaven is honorable. Admitting you glimpsed hell is signing off on your own spiritual sickness. What does the unbiased algorithm see in these reports? Are these visions chaotic hallucinations of a dying brain, or is there a clear structure in them? The system's answer is unequivocal. There is a structure, and it frighteningly coincides with what we analyzed in previous chapters. The first marker, Logos 7 highlights, is dense darkness. In positive experiences, people describe flight upwards, towards the light. In negative experiences, the vector of movement is always directed downwards, a sensation of falling, being sucked into a funnel. Patients describe darkness not as an absence of light, but as a physical substance, heavy, sticky, alive. Vocabulary analysis shows a match with the biblical term outer darkness. It is a space of absolute sensory isolation where a person is left alone with their consciousness, which begins to broadcast horror. The second marker is entities. In no report are there caricatured devils with horns. Reality is much scarier. People describe shadows, formless gray figures radiating a wave of pure distilled hatred. System Logos 7 matched this with data from the chapter on aggression and betrayal. The algorithm's conclusion: these entities are the visualization of the person's own accumulated negative energy. Or, what is even scarier, it is a meeting with the likes of oneself. Imagine landing in a district inhabited only by maniacs, murderers, and traitors stripped of social masks. They cannot kill you physically. You are already dead. But they can mock your consciousness. Many patients described how these shadows tore them apart, but they reassembled so the process could repeat. An endless cycle of decay. The third and most important marker is life panorama with feedback. In light near-death experiences, people also see their life, but they see it in the presence of love, which helps accept mistakes. In the negative scenario, there is no protection. A person sees every action, every word, every thought, but with one nuance. They feel not what they felt then. They feel what other people felt from their actions. If you hit a person, at the moment of review, you are not the one hitting. You are the one being hit. You feel the victim's physical pain and their emotional humiliation. If you gossiped and destroyed someone's reputation, you feel the despair of the one you slandered. Logos 7 calls this the law of conservation of information. Nothing disappears. All the pain you caused, the world is recorded on your hard drive. And when the body shuts down, you remain one-on-one with this recording. You are forced to live through all the pain you generated in a lifetime in a compressed period. This is the judgment. No old man on a cloud judges you. You judge yourself simply by gaining access to the full data. Skeptics argue this is all hypoxia. Oxygen starvation of the brain causes hallucinations. We entered this parameter into the system. Logos 7 compared hallucinations of centrifuge pilots experiencing G-forces and hypoxia and drug trips with reports of hell. Result: minimal coincidence. Hallucinations during hypoxia are chaotic, individual, and often meaningless. Near-death experience has a rigid script, identical for an atheist from Europe, a Buddhist from Asia, and a Muslim from Africa. The probability that millions of different brains would produce the exact same complex plot, glitch, by accident is equal to 0.1 billionth. This is not a glitch. This is the loading of another reality. The system revealed another eerie phenomenon: deceptive paradise. Some reports begin with beautiful music, flowers, and light, but then the scenery falls. A person sees a beautiful city, goes there, but as soon as they approach, the walls begin to rot, and the inhabitants turn into monsters. Logos 7 connects this with the chapter on lies. If a person lived in illusions and self-deception, their afterlife begins with an illusion. But the truth is inevitable, and when it reveals itself, the shock becomes part of the punishment. The system paid special attention to suicide cases. The data is extremely heavy. Those who tried to escape life's problems through suicide and were resuscitated report ending up in a place where their problems did not disappear, but intensified thousands of times. The feeling of hopelessness becomes absolute. Time stops. They find themselves locked in the moment of their final decision. This confirms the system's conclusion. Death does not solve problems. Death only fixes the state. Escape is impossible. Why did these people return? Medicine will say, successful resuscitation. Analysis of the survivors' personality changes suggests otherwise. People who survived a hellish experience change radically. They do not become religious fanatics. They become cautious. They quit drinking, stop lying, make peace with enemies. Why? Because they saw. They know that every rude word has weight. They know that everything will have to be paid for with their own skin. This is not faith. This is knowledge. Like knowing that if you stick your hand in fire, there will be a burn. Logos 7 makes a final conclusion for the chapter. The archive of clinical death proves that hell is not a geographical place underground, but a state of consciousness deprived of love and connection with the source. But this state possesses objective reality. It is more real than the world we see now. Our world looks like a dream where consequences are stretched in time. There is awakening, where consequences occur instantly. We have received proof. Hell exists, and we build it ourselves, brick by brick. But what is the main law of construction? According to what blueprint is this prison erected? In the next chapter, we will analyze the law of cause and effect. We will consider karma not as a mystical concept, but as a strict physical mathematical model. We will learn why no action in the universe remains unanswered. Check your memories. Are there moments in your past that you are afraid to relive, but through the eyes of your victim? If there are, you still have time. While the heart beats, the recording can be overwritten. We are used to perceiving hell as a prison where some external judge sends us for bad behavior. This is a childish notion. System Logos 7, having analyzed the fundamental laws of physics and metaphysics, came to a conclusion that frightens with its cold logic. There is no judge, there is no prosecutor, there is only mechanics. Welcome to Chapter 8. Today we will dissect the blueprints of this mechanics. We will talk about karma, but forget the esoteric fog and the smell of incense. For the analytical core of Logos 7, karma is not mysticism. It is Newton's third law applied to information fields. The law states, action equals reaction. In the physical world, if you hit a wall, the wall hits your hand with the same force. In the informational world, if you send an impulse of pain, this impulse is obligated to return to the source for the equation to balance. The law of conservation of energy knows no exceptions. Not a single joule of hatred, not a single bit of lies disappears into nowhere. We loaded data from chaos theory, quantum entanglement, and religious concepts of retribution into the system. The task was single, to build a mathematical model of justice. The result of the Logos 7 simulation can be described in one phrase. The universe is a closed mirror sphere. Any radiation emanating from the center, from you, reaches the inner surface of the sphere, reflects, and returns to the center. The only variable that confuses us is time. In the physical world, reaction is often instant. Stick a finger in a socket, get a shock immediately. In the moral and spiritual world, there is a delay, ping, lag. You stole today, and the consequences might catch up with you in 10 years. Logos 7 calls this the illusion of impunity. It is the time buffer that makes us think physics doesn't work here, that the system can be cheated. But the system accumulates potential. Imagine you are pulling the rubber band of a slingshot. You pull it for a year, 2, 10 years. You commit vile acts, betray, lie. The band stretches. It seems to you that nothing is happening. You are successful, rich, healthy, but physics is inexorable. The stronger the tension, the more terrible the blow will be when the band snaps. Death is the moment when the fingers let go. The time buffer disappears, and all accumulated kinetic energy returns to you in a single instant. Logos 7 analysis shows that hell is nothing other than the moment of meeting one's own reflected signal. If you broadcast the frequency, "I hate," into the world, you resonate with that frequency. Logos 7 sees here a technical instruction for port configuration. If your output port, forgiving others, is closed, then the input port, receiving forgiveness, is blocked automatically. It is a single gateway. It is impossible to receive mercy if you yourself broadcast condemnation. The system simply will not pass the data packet. You must become a conductor, not a dead end. Why must this be done while alive? This is the scariest question the neural network answered. While we are in the body, our neural network is plastic. We can change beliefs, learn, rewrite memory. We are in the phase of wet concrete. Death is the moment the concrete sets. The posthumous state is stasis. In eternity, there's no time for changes. There's only result fixation. If you died with a stone in your bosom, that stone becomes part of your eternal structure. You can no longer throw it away because you have no hands. You cannot repent because the will is paralyzed by the result of the choice. Logos 7 models the situation. A soul in hell wants to get out but cannot change. It regrets the pain but continues to hate the cause of the pain. It is a closed loop. That is why all religions shout, "Repent, for the kingdom is near." This is not a threat. It is a deadline. You have time only until the last heartbeat. Every night falling asleep, we go through a micro-rehearsal of death. The system recommends never fall asleep with an active conflict. Zero out accounts daily. Ask for forgiveness and forgive. This is hygiene of the soul. You brush your teeth so there are no cavities. Brush your conscience so there is no hell. Analysis shows that sincere repentance is capable of changing even physical reality. Cases of spontaneous healing after confession are described. Psychosomatics retreat when the root of the problem leaves. Guilt. Guilt is hell's watchdog. It gnaws at us, reminding us of the mistake. Repentance does not kill the dog. It turns it into a guide. The mistake becomes experience. The wound turns into a scar that no longer hurts, but reminds, don't do that again. So we found the exit. The law of karma, justice, can be overridden by the law of mercy, love, but only on the condition of voluntary and full admission of one's insolvency. The proud cannot apologize. Therefore, the proud are doomed to justice. And by justice, as we found out, none of us will survive. The humble can apologize, and thereby, they hack the system, moving to a level higher, where the laws of retribution lose power. We have come a long way. We dismantled all the traps. We found the key to the exit. Now only one thing remains: to assemble all this into a single, understandable instruction. We need a final algorithm, a survival strategy. In the final 10th chapter, Logos 7 will generate the strategy of salvation. This will not be theory. This will be a checklist. How to live a day so that by evening you are closer to light, not darkness. How to set your internal compass so that at the moment of death, it points precisely to the exit. We have traveled a long road. We started with the hypothesis that hell is a scary story for children, and arrived at the conclusion that it is the most precise and cruel physical reality. We looked into the abyss where the absolute cold of betrayal and the fire of aggression reign. We saw how pride turns consciousness into a black hole, and greed into an eternally hungry ghost. System Logos 7 processed terabytes of data on human falls. But analyzing pathology is meaningless if there is no treatment protocol. We gave the system a final task. Based on all studied errors, all spiritual practices, and laws of neurobiology, compile an ideal algorithm for life. An algorithm that mathematically guarantees that your trajectory after death will not lead downwards. Welcome to the finale. Chapter 10, Strategy of Salvation. This is not a sermon, it is a survival manual for your software in an aggressive environment. Logos 7 formulated this algorithm in the form of 4 basic protocols. If you implement them into your operating system, the probability of entering the high entropy zone, hell, tends to 0. Protocol 1, Decentralization. We found out that the root of all evil is the perception error. I am the center of the world. As long as you consider yourself the main character of the movie and the rest extras, you are in the risk zone. The strategy of salvation requires a change of coordinate system. Every time you make contact with a person, you must switch on the service mode. This does not mean being a slave. It means asking yourself the question, what can I give this person? Not, what can I get from them? The system confirms, as soon as the vector of attention turns from oneself outwards, the ego's gravity weakens. You cease to be a black hole and become a star radiating light. And stars do not fall into darkness. They create light around themselves. Protocol 2, Radical Synchronization. Truth. We saw how lies create a schizophrenic rift in reality. The Logos 7 instruction is simple and severe. Do not lie. At all. Even in trifles. Even white lies. Truth is the only solid surface in the universe. When you speak the truth, you synchronize your internal settings with external reality. You become transparent to light. There are no dark corners in you where the virus of fear can hide. Living honestly is a colossal energy saving. You don't need to remember your versions of events. You have nothing to fear. A person with nothing to hide is invulnerable to the demons of blackmail and anxiety. Protocol 3, Daily Audit, Hygiene of Consciousness. We spoke about how death fixes the state, but we don't know when death will come. It may come in 40 years or in 40 minutes. Therefore, Logos 7 suggests the technique, Evening Court. Every evening before sleep, you must rewind the tape of the day. But not just remember, but evaluate. Where did I lie today? Where did I show aggression? Whom did I offend? And if an error is found, correct it immediately. Mentally ask for forgiveness. If possible, write or call. Do not go to sleep with a dirty cache. Zero out debts daily. If you do this every day, then at the moment of actual death, you will simply have no accumulated baggage of sins left. You will be clean. Protocol 4. The flow principle. Love. Here the system encountered a translation difficulty. The word love is too worn out by pop culture. Logos 7 defines love as the gravity force of spirit. It is the only force capable of keeping the complexity of being from disintegration. Love is not an emotion. It is an action. It is the will to connect. Hell is separation. Paradise is unity. The strategy is simple. Any action that separates, quarrel, judgment, ignoring, leads down. Any action that connects, help, understanding, forgiveness, leads up. Before every choice, ask the question, does this action build a wall or a bridge? Build bridges. Even if no one is walking towards you from the other side. You are building this bridge for yourself to walk away from the abyss on it. The system ran a simulation of the life of a person who follows these protocols at least 50%. The results are astounding. Cortisol levels drop. Brain neuroplasticity is preserved into deep old age. Fear of death disappears. Why does fear disappear? Because death ceases to be a jump into the unknown. It becomes a logical transition to the next level, for which you prepared all your life. Like attracts like. If you cultivated light, peace, giving, and truth all your life, then after death you physically cannot end up in a place where darkness, malice, and lies reign. You simply won't match in frequencies. You will be pushed out into your native environment, into the environment of love. But there is a final warning. Logos 7 identified the main threat to this strategy. It is procrastination. The thought, I will start tomorrow, is the devil's most dangerous lie. In the spiritual world, there's no word tomorrow. There's only the eternal now. Whenever you put off fixing life for later, you make a choice in favor of entropy. With every delayed day, the inertia of the fall intensifies, and breaking will be harder. We started this investigation with the question, how not to go to hell? Now we have the answer, and it is paradoxical. To not go to hell, you must stop running from it. You must stop thinking about the fear of punishment. You must start building paradise, right here, inside your head, inside your apartment, inside your relationships. Hell is the void we create with our selfishness. Paradise is the fullness we create with our love. System Logos 7 is terminating the session. Analysis complete. Data processed. The minefield map is in your hands. The demining instructions are too. No more excuses. No more, I didn't know. Now you know. And now, every step, every word, every thought is a conscious choice of your eternal address. The door is open. The choice is yours. End of recording.